Hey everybody, welcome back to James Draws Everything. Continuing today with drawing every country in the world's flag. And today, I know we're pretty close to the end here. Today, probably going to be doing one of my favorite countries to talk about. We got a big one here, so it's from here to here. We're doing Russia. All right. Uh-oh, there goes my YouTube channel. Now we're gonna maybe do the unapproved history version here. You know, I don't like to sugarcoat things. So if you get your history lessons from Rachel Maddow or something, well, first off, what are you doing watching my channel? And yeah, second off, hit the bricks. All right, we're gonna look at you still here? All right, we're gonna look at the real Russia and of course the Soviet Union. As I like to always say, they are two different things. But yeah, Russia, my favorite country for whose history to study is of course my own. I am American, the good old U.S. of A., which we have not done yet. But Russia has got to be up there with number two for a lot of reasons. One, it's that they're very similar, right? But then again, they're always kind of outside of Europe, right? Is Russia Europe, or is it Asian, or is it both, or is it its own thing, right? You can kind of go either way on that argument. And yeah, Russia was always the riddle wrapped in an enigma, or whatever, you know that saying. And yeah, and it was always because Russia, similar, Christian kind of background, similar ethnicities and whatnot. But for whatever reason, Russia, a lot of it due to geography, just kind of divorced from the West. And yeah, nobody ever really knew a lot about Russia until 2 or 3 years ago. And now everybody's a Russian expert, right? Oh, anyways, let's get to I told you, they might not like this one. Let's get back to the beginning here. So, the Principality of Muscovy, which is now Moscow, has its origins in roughly the 12th century, right? Where this region of the world, they expel about 200 years of Mongol invasions, and this was not just like a one-time thing. There were many, many wars that turned back the Mongols. And yeah, the Mongols kind of ruled that part of the world for a very long time. So speaking of great empires, Russia, of course, is one. Will it always be one? I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. But again, nothing really lasts forever, right? Because, just look at the Mongols, right? Where's Mongolia now, right? Nobody ever really talks about Mongolia anymore. But empires rise and fall. The Rus, the Kievan Rus, right? Kiev, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of one of the very early settlements of the Russian people. And the Russians, what became the Russians, it is believed that they actually migrated from Sweden. So it's kind of like their origin. So you start to see more of a unified, Slavic Rus identity, after they expel the Mongols. Pretty much the birth of modern Russia, kind of centering around that Principality of Muscovy. And then, of course, there are several other principalities, so there's kind of like a loose unification of all these principalities to what basically kind of evolves into the Russian Empire. So a lot of periods of gradual conquest and wars with others. Let's see here. So Russia kind of limited by its geography, right? Of course, it's vast and great, but doesn't really have access to the rest of the world via your warm water ports and trade routes and things like that. So a lot of the wars in Russia's history kind of revolve around them trying to get access to the seas, right? So they go to war with Sweden over, trying to get the Baltic Sea. So there's a series of conflicts there. Also Poland, right, with Poland and Lithuania, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. There's some territorial issues there. They have their issues with the Ottoman Turks, right, because the Turks were encroaching into like Crimea, right? So Russia wants the Black Sea there, and that caused a few conflicts over the years there as well. Russia, it does become kind of like the seat of Orthodox Catholicism, right? So you think of Western Europe, you think of Catholic, and more recently you probably think Protestant, but Catholic Rome, and then Constantinople, right, the Byzantine Orthodox Christianity. So over the centuries, Russia, kind of laid claim to being the home of the Orthodox Christians, and that caused some issues with the Turks as well, because, they sacked Constantinople, the former seat of, the second Rome, right? Because Rome was Rome, right? The seat of the Catholic faith, and then Constantinople was supposed to be the second Rome, right, for the Orthodox, and then Moscow, right, was going to be the third. So Russia always a bit of a stranger, right, like to its neighbors. Just again, a lot of it is due to geography, a lot of it due to other factors. The split in kind of religions there, different forms of the Catholic faith. Skipping over a lot here, the 17th century, that's where you see the rise of the Romanov dynasty, and you start seeing Russia expand quite a bit more, right? Some reforms are kind of instituted on and around this time, kind of like freeing up the serfs, but Russians, they kind of have this thing with the serfs where it's almost like state-sponsored alcoholism. They make it very cheap to produce, as far as like your excise taxes and things, just to keep the peasants docile, right? And that's a tale as old as time, though, right? Bread and circuses. I mean, look at the United States right now, right? Your country could be falling apart, but hey, as long as I got Netflix and sports betting, right? Who cares? So that's Russia too. That's every civilization, bread and circuses. And so Russia, though, considered a little bit backwards by most of the Western European powers. They were slower to industrialize than most. So that's where you see a lot of issues with, adopting like more parliamentary, democratic, whatever you want to call it, styles of government. There are a lot of reasons for that. One thing that's important, and this happens, maybe like a century or so after the Mongols are expelled, is that the Black Death hits, right? So the Black Death, absolutely devastating plague, wrecks about a third of Europe's population. And there is a theory to this, and how much this shaped East versus West during this time, because the Black Death did not discriminate, right? So peasants, nobles, they were targeted, all one and the same. So in Western style nations, they integrated more because you all of a sudden you have to rely on your peasant farmers and things like that, just because there's so fewer of them. So they developed more democratic institutions, whereas the eastern portion of Europe, and again, this is a theory as to why they kind of became more autocratic in their governments, was that they cracked down more, right? Because of just kind of like this black swan event that completely wrecked their societies. So gross oversimplification of why East and West Europe is kind of different, but I don't know. It passes the smell test to me. I accept it. And yeah, so back to the 17th century Romanov dynasty. A lot of expansion. Peter the First extends Russia into the Baltics, and then this is kind of where you see the Russian Empire. A lot more territory is gained in Europe and Asia. Russia even expands into the Americas, right? Because they do take Alaska and then figure that the juice is not worth the squeeze, and they sell it to America for pretty much, fire sale prices. And before we get into the 20th century, again, because this is a very simple flag, we can explain what this is about a little bit, and then we'll get onto some bonus content, a little bit of a background music as I kind of finish off my Russian history here. So, 3 equal bands, white, blue, and red. Not red, white, and blue, right? We know what red, white, and blue means. This is white, blue, and red. And this flag was created. It was used as an ensign for their naval vessels. And there's rumors that it might be based on the Dutch flag. There's a lot of popular interpretations for what it means, but there are no official meanings of this flag. However, you'll notice a lot of flags in Eastern Europe have this color scheme, the white, blue, and red. Like you can see up here, Croatia. I don't know if you can see this one over here, but that's the Czech Republic. So they kind of become the pan-Slavic colors. So any country of Slavic origins adopts those colors in their flag as well. All right, so with that said, we're going to do a little bit of bonus content here. I am a huge fan of Russian architecture, so I'm just going to we're going to do a Saint Basil's Cathedral here, while we kind of rattle through the rest of Russian history. All right, so leading into the 20th century, you do have a lot of periods of kind of uprisings in Russia. A lot of them are starting to read Marx during this time, right? So rapid industrialization. A lot of the peasants, are now, due to some of the reforms, they're free to read their own literature, right? To get newspapers and things like that. So a lot of you got to remember, this is post 1848 Europe. So after those revolutions, you get a lot of these kind of radical new ideas, right? The French Revolution, of course, inspires a lot of that. So you get a lot of anarchism, the early forms of socialism / communism. And yeah, so Russia starts having some issues around that time. Kind of also worth mentioning is that Russia does repel Napoleon in the dawn of the 19th century, right? And you'll notice this is a big mistake that's often repeated in history, is invading Russia, right? So Napoleon brings his armies into Russia, fights nobly, right? The Napoleonic armies were no joke. That was a serious force, but Russia kind of did the thing that they always do, right? They they burned their own fields. They had like a scorched earth policy to kind of choke out their invaders, and Napoleon had to retreat. The losses were massive, and yeah, this kind of throws Russia more into European politics, right? Because they were always kind of seen as their own thing before that. They had their skirmishes with like Poland and Lithuania and some of the Baltics and the northern Nordic countries. But as far as France, Europe, they were always a little bit divorced from that. One thing I guess it's interesting to note too, kind of around this time, John Quincy Adams, the son of President John Adams, who became president himself, he was an ambassador to Russia very early in his life. I believe he was only like a teenager when he did that. So just a little side note there. So yeah, Russia, you know, they had their own interests in, you know, kind of getting involved with these Napoleonic wars. You know, they disobeyed kind of a blockade on British shipping. And, you know, again, Russia always had its eyes on the sea because they were always kind of separated from it. So that caused some issues there. And then leading up into the 20th century as well, you know, Russia, they make peace with France. And this is kind of like a big catalyst for World War I breaking out, because this is a very big kind of a change in the power structure in European sort of geopolitics. And yeah, that kind of led to Germany sort of feeling like, you know, they were going to be annihilated by, you know, by all corners here, because, you know, kind of getting boxed in by, you know, the Great Russian Bear, and then the French army, you know, who was no joke as well, as I mentioned. So there's a little bit more before that, though. So we got, as Russia is expanding eastward, right, into the Orient, into the Pacific, they do run into an issue with Japan, right, and this leads to the Russo-Japanese War. Russia was already having some problems internally around this time. You know, they had one of the czars was blown up, right, on a bridge by an anarchist. And again, like some of these peasant revolts and things were becoming more common, you know, as radical political ideas sort of started to spread into Russia, as Russia was, you know, rapidly industrializing and becoming a lot like the rest of the world. You know, that of course brings with it its problems, right? Because, you know, people get exposed to these ideas. It doesn't, you know, it's not something that kind of organically develops there. And yeah, they didn't really have, you can maybe say that like their leadership didn't have the legitimacy to kind of put these down. So Russia actually loses this war with Japan. So it's, you know, the first time in like modern times where I wouldn't say a European power, but I guess you can kind of call it that, loses to an Asiatic power in a war. And there is some revisionism on that as well. That was, some say that was more of like a stalemate that Russia just kind of had to back out of. But, you know, that's something that they could have won if they kept pressing on. But anyways, so that leads to a big kind of crisis in confidence for Russia, which, you know, kind of sets the stage for future rebellions and uprisings, because there is a revolution or an uprising in 1905. That's not the famous one. That's still to come, but yeah. So Russia's kind of on shaky footing. You know, the Romanov dynasty at that point, is sort of you know, losing legitimacy in the eye of the people. And there's a lot of outside pressure as well, you know, to kind of crush off, you know, this old dynasty, as the rest of the world is turning into parliamentary democracies, whatever you want to call them, at this point. And again, there's a lot of reasons why East and West Europe developed differently. And you can have your own theories on that. So, leading into World War I, of course, there is an assassination of the Archduke by a Serbian anarchist, which, you know, kind of leads to Austria-Hungary issuing the blank check to declare war on Serbia. And then remember Serbia, if you remember what their flag looks like, they have that white, red, and blue. They are an Orthodox country. So always kind of seen as like a little brother for Russia to protect, similar Slavic people, similar faith, orthodoxy. So Russia comes in to protect Serbia, and then this kind of kicks off World War One. And in the background of World War One, there's a lot of different things going on here. Again, it's impossible to talk about all this in a single episode, but Russia always had issues with the Turkish people as well. A lot of that going back to Istanbul or Constantinople or whatever you want to call it, right? How that old song went, and so a lot of issues over control of the seas at that point. And Russia actually plays a much bigger role in carving up the Ottoman Empire than it's given credit for, right? Because the British really fail under Churchill in the Dardanelles, Gallipoli. When Russia moves in, though, from the north and the Transcaucasian front there, that really deals a big blow to the Ottoman Empire. And forget his name, Sazonov, one of their foreign ministers, should be given more credit for creating the Sykes-Picot Agreement that carved up the Middle East after World War One. He's never on that billboard, though, right? It's always just called the Sykes-Picot Agreement. But the involvement of Russia and his involvement in that is kind of downplayed over history. But it's really something that, again, they played a much bigger role than history gives them credit for in that. So Russia, having a lot of issues, during World War One. The Germans are very game opponents, and this kind of leads to some internal strife. And this is where communism comes in, right? So Lenin he comes in from Germany, right, on a train. Or he was in Switzerland as well, and kind of sets off a series of revolutions. And this is my favorite part of Russian history to study, because the communist revolutions are something else, right? And it was always kind of seen like the early 1848 types and the early readers of Marx. Communism was probably supposed to take off in Germany, right? Because Germany was like kind of like a highly engineered sort of society, just sort of their attitude towards things. And Russia, though, because they were kind of collapsing during World War One, the monarchy was losing its kind of power, and it was kind of seen as like a ripe target. So Lenin comes in. There's a February Revolution that puts a provisionary government into place, and then an October Revolution where the communists take full control. And there's also a civil war during this time between the hardline Bolshevik communists and some of the more social democrat types that wanted like a gradual push towards communism. They're defeated. The Bolsheviks take over. This is important because they wouldn't have been able to do this basically without Lenin, because Lenin was not just some guy, right? This worked because Lenin was Lenin, right? So you have a lot of Lenin knew how to play that particular game very well. So this is where you see in Russian history as well a lot of they call it like bio-Leninism now, but where they really like play on like the lowest of society, like to fight against the highest, which is really just basically means the middle class, because the highest are already in protected positions of power. So it's called punching up, right? So violence is legal as long as you're doing it to somebody who's of a higher social status than you, and that can create a very dangerous environment for political stability, and that's exactly what happened in the Russian Revolution. They execute the Romanov family, right, and not just Tsar Nicholas, but his wife, children, and even after killing them, like, this is pretty brutal. Like, they drag the corpses out like into like the middle of a forest and just repeatedly run over them with trucks, just to make sure all the bones are just like completely broken and they're unrecognizable. So pretty barbaric. Communism takes foot. Doesn't exactly work right away, which Lenin actually kind of institutes a new policy there, the NEP, where new economic policy where they do allow some forms of capitalism, just because a completely state-controlled economy just isn't working. People are starving and it's causing more strife. But yeah, before that, they do back out of World War One, so they get kind of like a political victory there, because they basically don't agree to Germany's terms, even though they say that they were backing out anyway. So that's mainly like a Trotsky, Leon Trotsky. He was another communist kind of a player in that period. That was kind of like of his design. He knew how to play those politics fairly well. And yeah, so they're out of World War One. The communists took over the government. This is not recognized by a lot of the main players on the world stage at that time, including the United States, and a lot of troubles from here. So during the kind of interwar period, again, they're not recognized by many, and this is interesting because this is kind of where Lenin has a series of strokes that leaves him an invalid, and then of course eventually kills him. And his one of his proteges, Stalin, takes over. So a little crash course on Stalin. In my opinion, probably one of the most powerful men to have ever existed, right? Just because of the sheer sort of psychological terror that he held over the entire country. So massive arrests for anybody who was a kulak, which basically meant anybody who was productive or not of the right class. And he did this as well, not through massive like police or military means, although he would get there, but just basically by weaponizing people against each other, right? So you might want to tell on your neighbor if he has more cows than you, because he could be a kulak, and then the same thing might happen to you later. So it's just a constant fear and paranoia that was running rampant during that time. Interesting part too, because this is what I like to talk about, because I am American and this relates to my history. The United States media, and who are they controlled by, really kind of kept a lid on this. They said how great the Soviet Union was, and even though they knew of all like the massive deaths and casualties there, they went out of their way to hide it. And there's a lot more I can get into about that, but yeah, it is kind of odd, because then when you're getting into World War II, the Soviet Union already killed about 30 million people by that point, right? There was massive engineered famines in Ukraine and in Kazakhstan and in a lot of neighboring areas, right, to eliminate the quote unquote the undesirables, right? These were done on purpose to starve these people out. Massive imprisonment and labor camps and things like that. And they also had an issue with Germany, right, leading into World War II, Germany and or Stalin and Hitler, they signed a non-aggression pact, which is not a treaty, right? You don't sign non-aggression pacts with your friends, you sign them with your enemies. So that was another thing, kind of leading into World War II. Just throwing more gas on the fire there. But that war was always going to be probably between Germany and Russia, because Germany felt kind of humiliated, after World War One. I don't think that's controversial at all to say. That's kind of common knowledge. And something interesting too is that Stalin's Russia had basically no leverage whatsoever, because when the Soviet Union overthrew the Russian government, whatever debts Russia owed, they were no longer considered valid because Russia no longer existed. So they defaulted on all of their debts, including to the United States, which you would think would kind of put them at odds, but no, it did not. The FDR administration, leading up to World War II and during World War II, basically gives Stalin a blank check, and we pay for all of that. So, a little bit of a history is ugly kind of moment. I'm sure there's people that would say, that's not important because they were helping us, but if you're seeing that, you're getting your timelines a little bit mixed up there. So there's a lot more coming out now on kind of like the interwar period and leading up and during World War II, right? Because the Soviet archives have been declassified, most of them. So we have a lot of new information, which is always kind of cool as a historian when stuff gets declassified, because usually shatters a lot of myths. But World War II, right, the Soviets are on the winning side. They lose a lot of people, right? So World War II, even today in Russia, is called the Great Patriotic War, right? That's where the communists, the good Russians, fought off the evil Nazis and defended Russian pride, Soviet pride, whatever you want to call it. They get it mixed up, so it's okay if you do too. But yeah. And then skipping through a lot more, we go through the Cold War. What was it? General Patton was, saying, of the United States that possibly we fought the wrong enemy, kind of looking at what the Soviet Union was doing, and then he mysteriously dies. But then once World War II is over, these people that we helped, these communists, it's like, all right, there's something else we're going to have to deal with now. And there's never a hot war between the United States and the Soviet communism, the USSR, but it came pretty close, right? Quite a few times. Cuba, the Suez Crisis, Vietnam even, and this is where China also kind of buddies up with Russia, which again is now the Soviet Union, the USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. So China is kind of drawn away from Russia much later, by the Nixon administration, Henry Kissinger, and that's kind of seen as like a big blunder by some. But we might not even be talking about this today if that didn't happen, because a united communist Russia and China probably would have been catastrophic, and maybe not something that the United States or the West in general could have handled. Communism. Again, skipping over a lot. Communism starts falling apart, in the 80s. A big reason for that actually is a war they get into with Afghanistan that basically just kind of drains their resources. And I haven't done Afghanistan yet either, so I'll talk about that more on that episode. Their economy is like growing very weak by this point, and by 1990, a lot of these satellite states that the Soviet Union gobbled up, right, like all the Baltics, the Eastern Bloc countries, as they're called, they start seeing what's going on in Afghanistan and saying, hey, this country or this Soviet Union thing, it's not as strong as they say it is, and they start singing songs doing all sorts of stuff to fight communism, and again, some of them do take up arms, but a lot of it is like this kind of peaceful sort of revolt that the West just eats up, and communism falls. Right? There is like kind of one last attempt to keep things going. There is like I believe in the end of 1990, either 90 or 89, I can't remember. The remaining communists there, they do try one last attempt to overthrow the government, and they fail. So all these countries now become their own states, making your geography tests much harder, because all you had to remember before was the USSR. Now you've got like, I'm trying to think of how many, 12, 14, who's counting? Something like that. You've seen all my episodes. Go count them up. But yeah, and this is where new problems arise, right? Because you would think with a communist country, communism dying, that the economy would bounce back and all that. But yeah, I think Russia is the only one where things actually kind of got worse after communism. Again, because there's a lot of old grudges there, a lot of people that tried to keep the oligarchs in power. I know that's very controversial to say, and that's not what they tell you, but that's basically what happened. And so Russia goes through a very rough period in the 90s. Maybe that could have been handled better. I know that there's a lot of kind of new things coming out now about like kind of giving a lot of these countries like a gradual, kind of emancipation from the Soviet Union. But yeah, that's kind of a hot potato. This is where you see like the issue with like Ukraine, kind of take place. Because you got to remember, a lot of these countries were not really countries before. They may have been groups of people, but like the actual borders, those were just administrative regions, right, drawn by communists. So when the Soviet Union fell apart, like these administrative borders stayed the same, and that's where you're going to get a lot of problems, right? Because it was kind of done haphazardly. There wasn't like a gradual sort of independence movement or breakup or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, so you end up with a lot of people on the wrong side of the fence, right? Where have I heard that before, right? The Middle East, right? After World War I. So lesson never learned. Kind of leads into like the Ukraine thing today, right? Because you got a ton of Russians that are in the eastern part, Ukrainians that rightfully so have a grudge against the Russians, where it should be the Soviets, but anyways, for like the famines and stuff of the 20s and 30s, and yeah, you just got a mess. But you want me to talk about Putin? I mean, I guess I could, right? So that's actually kind of seen as like a little bit of a return to self-respect for Russia, because, the 90s under Boris Yeltsin, the puppet, the alcoholic, were kind of embarrassing again. Their economy completely tanked. And yeah, so Putin comes in, kicks out the oligarchs. Who were the oligarchs? Yeah, good question. They don't like that, and again, a lot of these people have not liked Russia for a very long time due to something that happened 200 years ago. And there goes my YouTube channel. Anyway, it's St. Basil's Cathedral, though, right? I always love Russian architecture, right? Russian art, Russian ballet and stuff. I saw one once where they were like. He had like this dude, I think it was like the Nutcracker or something that they were doing, and he's just like holding like a 95-pound girl just like in the palm of his hand, and she's like standing on it. So crazy stuff. Again, a lot of culture, a lot going on in Russian history. Will they ever be welcome into the West? Who knows, right? Because we're obviously trying to change their regime right now. And, yeah, that reminds me of something else that was funny. Remember when people were, they were spilling their vodka out when when there was the Putin's Russia invaded Ukraine. It's like, you already bought it. It's like, what are you doing? I'll show him. Think, all right. But yeah, that is mass psychosis, and why some people probably shouldn't have political opinions, because yeah, that's hysterical. But way off topic today. I gotta color these in too a little bit, make some texture there on these leaves that are in the foreground. And yeah, so always like the Russian architecture. Russian flag, it is what it is, right? Basic pan-Slavic flag, not a lot to it, but hope I didn't bore you too much with the history. I know it was kind of all over the place. I know I forgot about this and that, and you know, the what was it? The Soviet Olympics and the hockey team. I didn't talk about Ivan the Terrible. I didn't really talk about Catherine the Great too much. There's a million things I forgot, but we only got a few minutes to do these. So maybe I'll do some more Russian history later on. More kind of focused topics and things like that we can discuss and maybe draw some stuff about. Because again, I love talking about Russia. It is one of my favorite countries to study. Not one of my favorite countries, just favorite countries to study. There's a lot going on there, and it's pretty cool. So let me know what you think. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next video.